are well. Since today is September 11th, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about books that will help us remember 9/11, those who lost their lives, first responders, and those who survived. I also thought that we could do a book tour of New York City. For those who are new, thanks for watching my video. My name is Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl. If you followed my blog, then you may already know that I love New York City and I love reading books set in New York City. I have visited many times. The first time I was there was only 3 weeks after 9/11. So I have watched the city change over the last 19 years and have missed visiting this year because of COVID. Today I am going to share 4 books to remember 9/11 and then 7 books to take a virtual book tour of New York City. At the end of the video, as a bonus, I will share 2 bookstores in Manhattan that I absolutely love. To start, I'm going to share 2 books that I read shortly after 9/11. The first is Let's Roll by Lisa Beamer. I have donated that book to a school library, but Lisa Beamer is the wife of Todd Beamer, who is well known as one of the heroes from United Flight 93. Of course, we don't know everything that happened on this flight, but we do know that when the passengers found out what had happened and they knew that 2 planes had hit the towers in New York, they knew that their flight was heading to do even more damage and destruction. So some of the passengers decided that they would take matters in their own hand to stop it, and knowing that they were going to die regardless, they gave up their lives fighting back, and most likely they saved many more lives. Using transcripts from phone calls and sharing the only information that we do know, Lisa Beamer shares the events leading up to that horrible morning, what it was like to learn what had happened on the flight, and how Lisa's own faith helped her overcome this tragedy. Another book I read while on a road trip to Newfoundland with my dad, probably a few years after 9/11, was The Day the World Came to Town by Jim DeFede. This story is getting more well known because of the Broadway play Come From Away. It is the story of how the small town of Gander, Newfoundland, took in all of the passengers from 38 planes that had to be rerouted on September 11th. It caused Gander's population to double in size. And this book shares the many things that the passengers and Gander citizens had to overcome and how people developed lifelong friendships during a very trying time. These stories are heartwarming and delightful, and they give us a glimpse of some of the positive things that were happening then. 2 books that are still on my list to read are 102 Minutes by Jim Dwyer, which tells the story from inside the towers on that day. And a more recent publication is The Only Plane in the Sky by Garrett M. Graff. This story is told as it was lived inside the Twin Towers, as the voices of those who lived it. And hopefully I can get to these 2 books soon. So we've started talking about New York City and the 9/11 Memorial, which is in Lower Manhattan or downtown. So now we will stay in Lower Manhattan and visit Trinity Church. New York by Edward Rutherfurd is a massive historical fiction novel about New York City. Much of it revolves around real and fictional characters who were members of Trinity Church. Some of them are buried in the cemetery there. The book is a commitment, over 1,000 pages commitment. It follows families from New York's early beginnings to post 9/11. Now we will make our way to the High Line. The High Line is an old rail trail on the west side that has been turned into a walkway and park. The High Line is where Elevator Pitch by Lynwood Barclay begins, when a dead body is found on the High Line. Then an elevator accident happens on Monday, which is horrible. But then another elevator accident happens on Tuesday, and so on. The question then becomes, who is causing this and why, and is it related to the body on the High Line? There are some quirky, feisty, and interesting characters in this book. There are some great one-liners, and there were also several times at the end of a chapter where my mouth would be open wide in astonishment. I had a few theories about the who and the why, and I came pretty close, but there were still some great surprises along the way. Plus, the Strand is mentioned in this book, and I will talk about the Strand again at the end of the video. From the High Line, we will head to Broadway. The Chaperone by Laura Moriarty is a historical fiction novel about Louise Brooks, who became a silent film star. This story is about Louise and her chaperone, Cora Carlyle. Cora Carlyle brought her to New York City in 1922. The writing in this is fantastic, and of course I love the setting and the era and the characters. So we'll now leave Broadway and head a bit further east to Grand Central Terminal for Fiona Davis's book called The Masterpiece. This is another historical fiction. It is told from two perspectives. One is Clara Durden in the 1920s. The other is Virginia Clay in the 1970s. An abandoned art school in the terminal and a painting connects the two women. I really enjoyed this book, and all of Fiona Davis's books take place in New York, so I do want to read them all. Now we will go further north to Central Park. The Nest by Cynthia Sweeney has a couple of scenes in Central Park. The story is really about a rather dysfunctional family. 4 siblings have a joint trust fund that their father left them, and they'll be receiving that money soon. But all 4 siblings have their own needs for the money, and they want to make sure that it's protected. So it becomes a question of, will this money bring the siblings closer together or alienate them even more? So while in Central Park, we will head over to the west side of the park to pay our respects at Strawberry Fields. This is where Harlan Coben's thriller Runaway starts. Simon Green's daughter is gone. She's addicted to drugs and she hasn't been seen in a long time, but Simon sees her busking near Strawberry Fields. And when he approaches her, instead of being grateful to see him, his daughter runs. I really enjoyed this thriller. I did not figure out how it would go at the end. There were definitely a lot of surprises for me. It's a really good thriller if you like thrillers. Our last stop will be further up the street at the Natural History Museum for the Rosie Project by Graeme Simsion. This is the first book in a trilogy. I adore the main character, Don Tillman. I would consider this to be a romance or humor fiction. Although it's never said explicitly, I would say that Don Tillman is somewhere on the autism spectrum. Everything is routine, everything is timed, and everything is scientific. It's what he understands, so it only makes sense that that is also how he approaches his love life. So when Rosie Jarman asks Don to help her find her biological father, his attention is now focused on this new project. So why the Natural History Museum? Well, it's because in the novel, Rosie and Don visit the museum, which for Don, who is so science-minded, it's like heaven for him. And I must say, the Natural History Museum is very cool if you have a chance to visit. This book is delightful. So whenever I visit New York, I always visit a bookstore or 2, or 5, or 6. There are so many very cool bookstores all over Manhattan. 2 that I visit the most are the Strand, which I said is mentioned in Elevator Pitch. And the Strand is on Broadway. It has over 2 million new, used, and rare books. And definitely if you get a chance to go, check out the top floor, because I have found some really great gems there, some first editions and some rare books. And they also have the second location on Columbus Ave that the next time I'm in New York, I will definitely make sure I visit. The other bookstore that I visit most often is 3 Lives and Company in Greenwich Village. This corner bookstore is quaint and adorable on the outside and welcoming and cozy on the inside. It is one of the best curated bookstores I've ever been to, and the people who work there always have great recommendations. There are so many others. Perhaps I will do another video of bookstores soon. If you enjoyed this content and would like more content with diverse books and authors, please hit subscribe and stick around. Please let me know in the comments below if you have read any of these books or if you have some recommendations for books about 9/11 or New York. I will include links to the books and the 2 bookstores mentioned in the video in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to make every day an adventure.